Welcome to the podcast. This show is entirely dedicated to the wisdom and the stories of people embracing their true and extraordinary nature, of overcoming, breaking through limits, tapping into universal wisdom, and hopefully inspiring you to do the same. Hey, welcome back to Being Extraordinary with Akasha Awakened. So I have this funny story I want to share with you. It feels like it's me just venting because it was so incredibly frustrating. But I have signed up for new podcast software. Hooray, hooray, hooray. And this is such a great thing because I love this podcast, but if you've been following me for a while, it's incredibly inconsistent. And it's because of the immense amount of background work that is required to get an episode out. And it's just time consuming. And when you're a one-woman show, it's just, you have to prioritize things, and sometimes this stuff falls to the wayside. But it's not how I want it to be. It's something that whenever I think about who I want to be or how I want to execute my work and, leave a mark in this life, I guess, we want to share our gifts with others. It's like, this is something that always I come back to in those visions or in those meditations. And it's just because I also enjoy it. So it's very exciting, new software, hooray. But I have spent so much time trying to figure out how to use it. So I had actually recorded this exact episode last week. And when I had gotten through the recording process, I realized that it didn't actually record. The video was there, but no audio. And I was so bummed out because it was an hour of my time and very frustrating. The second thing is I spent about 40 minutes this morning trying to figure out what the glitch was. And to be honest, I have no idea exactly what the glitch was anyway, but it seems to be working now, thank God, because it was very frustrating. So we're here. But the con to all of this is that a lot of times when I am doing episodes and wanting to share information with people, it just kind of flows out in this really organic, authentic way. And I was so proud and excited about how well that episode had come out. And now I have to do it again. And I just don't want to psych myself out by trying to recreate what was already created. I have to set the intention that take 2 is going to be even better and more of what needed to be said. And I can't try to remember what I was saying. I need to just say it. That's even more frustrating than the technology stuff because I don't do well with a script or an agenda. It's just better if it comes out. So take 2, let's give it a whirl. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is it's really been coming up in my awareness a lot. It's something that's been coming up in my work. I've been wondering how I can incorporate more of this kind of stuff. It's just magic that I've been personally experiencing on my own. And then this magical thing happened, and Miley Cyrus did a podcast interview and also talked about exactly what was on my mind. And it just felt like it was the right time to bring it forward in this space. Really, what I want to talk about is how our stories from the past create these negative imprints in our subconscious. And these negative imprints in our subconscious block us without us even knowing on a regular, everyday basis from really moving into the next level of whatever it is that we desire. So I will break all of that down. But the point of all this is I want everyone to be aware of how much our subconscious is fueling our entire reality, and that sometimes it's just worth it to go into your stories, to go into your subconscious and figure out what imprint or riff in the timeline exists that's blocking you from being or feeling or existing as you desire to be right now, in the present, or in the near future. So let's just break that down. So let's start with the ideas of being where we want to be and who we want to be in the now. So this isn't to suggest that you are fundamentally flawed or you're not pure enough or you have work to do or you have shadow to address. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we all desire something, whether it's more time, more peace, maybe more money, more travel, better community, more people that listen, better health, better sleep, better love, you name it, right? We always want more. And that's not a bad thing because we come to Earth to experience the physical world, which means as soon as we experience what's in our immediate reality, we're like, okay, what else can I experience? And we get very excited about this experiential journey of being human. And we see it in children, right? It's coming from this very pure place. It's not greed. It's not anything. When we watch children, they're exploring, they're looking at bugs, they're looking at the blade of grass, they want to go swimming. But then after they've swam and played with the bugs and did whatever, they're like, oh my gosh, like what else is there that I can learn and experience? Well, adults are the same. It's just really been beaten out of us. And so wanting to tap into these deeper layers of experience, whatever they are, is the name of the game. But not in a way of greed or accumulating junk. It's very heartfelt and soulful. So the meaning of everything I've ever done with Akasha Awakened is trying to get people there, is trying to get people into this place and to realize their power to constantly create these beautiful results for themselves and to have more health or happiness or time or money or travel or you name it, and that you're worth it. So what's stopping us from being there? It's these subconscious beliefs that live from the past, and we believe them to be true in the past, and they influence us in the background until we rewrite that story. So here's where Miley Cyrus comes in. So I'll try to link her episode below if you want to watch it. But what was so inspiring about Miley doing this episode is it made me realize so many things. She basically talks about her exact journey, and I'll share some of mine, I'll share some of my clients, and how this subconscious background really affects the present, because it's mind-blowing to me still, and I've been doing this full-time for 6 years. I'm always amazed at these kinds of things. So when Miley shares her story, which I will reiterate for you in a moment, it made me think of a few things. It made me think, okay, wow, I actually haven't ever explained in that concise of a way what the heck the point of my work is and how important it is for our journey in general. And it doesn't mean you have to come and see me as a practitioner. It just means that if you're wondering why you're stuck, this is it. And sometimes you just need a guide or a practitioner. And there's tons of different ways to go about it. But anyways, that I've never explained it in this way. And maybe it needs to be said, the importance of it, second of all, like how much it is everything. And then I think a lot of times even me, I assume that I'm in the counterculture. I really assume that I'm this, off the beaten path type of way of moving forward. And, you're kind of in this like luxury soul exploring space that not everybody's privy to. But the more that more that I watch or observe, everyone who's fundamentally successful is already doing soul work. It's the key to everything. So then Miley comes forward and she talks about this stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh, people that are very successful and don't have so many glass ceilings and blocks are doing this work. And I just see it in little places all the time. Like, Miley talking about her experience with like theta hypnosis. And then, there was somebody who's a very successful artist, and, she's had interesting dreams and visions and is very aware of other lives. I was looking at a musician not that long ago, and they had tattoos of the planet sigils on them. And I was like, everybody's doing it. Everybody who's successful is working out these blocks because you have to be there. And it's just even something that was a blind spot for me. Part of my personal story was I thought I could never amount to anything because I wasn't born into anything. In my class, there was 8 kids, very small farm school. My parents were like working class people, and I didn't have any like relatives. I live in Prairie, Saskatchewan. It's not like living in New York or LA, not that that was even remotely close to, or London. Like it wasn't that those things were a dream of mine, but you think that those opportunities for success are present for people that live somewhere or have an aunt or a relative who's like somebody, or there's money to fund the project. Well, I didn't come from any of that. So I thought it meant that I couldn't be anything. Turns out, and I mean, not that I couldn't be anything, that I had to kind of settle in life, that I couldn't have my own business or I couldn't travel. I always had to just fit in a box and sort of scrape by and pick which box I wanted to live in. And that's really what I did. I was like, which box do I want to be in? I guess that one seems okay. I won't regret that. All right. But I don't think I ever wanted to be in a box. So anyways, it's just this reminder that people are doing this work at very high levels. And that's where you see people really start to find these high levels of success, because you just frankly either have to come into this lifetime without any imprinted negative past beliefs, or you have to do the work. That's just how we succeed. So anyways, that's what kind of Miley inspired in me. So I was like, I need to talk about this, because I was just elated to see somebody in the popular culture talking about the work that me and a lot of my colleagues are doing, but we feel like we're kind of doing this like background dungeon sort of off culture. And then you see it in the pop culture and you're like, oh my God, it's happening. This is important. These people are doing it too. Anyways, so basically, what am I talking about with these negative imprinted beliefs? It's something that's coming from the past that's affecting your present and blocking you from moving into the future that you're basically desiring to create. So the past being your past lives, your ancestors, or your childhood. And usually they're kind of all one and the same. And I believe I do a whole episode about how these three channels are very, very connected. So if you're interested about your past and how childhood and ancestors and your past lives are connected, I think it's episode number 17. So check it out if you want to expand on that ID. And again, it's subconscious. So this was Miley's story. Without further ado, I didn't listen to the whole episode. I just watched that one excerpt and was like, my heart was on fire. I loved it. So she's talking about how she used to suffer from very severe stage fright. And finally, she went to, I believe it was like a hypnotherapist. And I will talk about, different modalities that can really help work on this. And hypnosis is definitely one of them, but so is the Akashic records. Even guided meditations can be really powerful. But anyways, so she goes to, I think what it is a hypnotherapist. And, she's kind of in this theta state and they say, well, what are you so scared of? Why are you scared to go on stage? And she said, I just want them to love me. And so then they kind of went back in time to figure out where this story began. And it's so freaking cool. So her mom had been given up for adoption. So the soul that inhabits her mother is in the womb, in utero, and she can hear her parents, her biological parents, talking about how they're going to give her up for adoption. And she, in the womb, the spirit inhabiting that fetus, says, I just want them to love me. But she gets given up for adoption, and mom never works out that story within herself, and it's passed on to Miley, and it manifests inside of her like severe anxiety, stage fright. And she said after she knew where it came from and sort of like understood what was happening, realized it didn't have anything to do with her, she said she never felt stage fright again. And that is exactly how everything works. I have goosebumps. Like, I just can't with those kind of stories. I don't know why. It's just incredible. So that is an example of how what happens to your ancestors, which I'm sure if we're really thinking about it, we're like, yikes, my ancestors have been through some shit, right? So you're kind of like, I don't want to, it's a lot. There's a lot. I am going to share some of my personal examples with this as well from my students without naming any names, of course, and then my own, because the irony of Miley's, this kind of mirrored experience of Miley bringing that up, I had recently uncovered one of my own subconscious blocks, and I was so incredibly angry about it and then sad. And honestly, now I'm excited to move on from it because it was so present in my entire life. So I will talk about that, but I want to just kind of direct us to more of the mechanisms of why this is the way that it is. So why is it important? How does it matter? For people who've worked with me, some of this might be familiar, but I can't not touch on it, right? So when I'm doing this work for myself and when I'm doing it for my clients as well, I'm using the Akashic records. So the Akashic records are my domain, but the Akashic records is like the library of your soul, the stories of your soul. So it makes perfect sense that that would be the exact same place you could find information. So the Akashic records are this etheric database, and it exists outside of time and space, and all of your soul's experiences will be recorded there. And so you can kind of compare this concept to things like Google Drive or iCloud or just even the internet in general. There's all this data uploaded in the cloud, but you can't like drive to the storehouse for the internet, right? It's just in the ether. And it's something very spiritual. It's very soulful because here's why. So it exists in the upper dimensions. So for example, it's like, this isn't woo-woo stuff. We're just talking about physics here. So we live in the third dimension. It's very physical. It's kind of a lower dimension. The Akashic records exist in a higher dimension. So there's more light. There's more light there. So it's very spiritual. It's very pure. And it exists outside of our concepts of space and time, which is really here in the lower dimensions, right? And that's not woo-woo stuff. This is physics, okay? That part, the dimensional part. So anyways, what I do is we can and with the intention, so we look back into points in the story where something negative has happened, And we can actually like rework the storyline or archive the story and mark it as complete. And then it shifts it out of our current reality. And the reason that we want it to be shifted out of our reality is because this is how we manifest. So when we're on Earth, we are bound by the law of karma. It's a universal law. It's something that just governs the nature of reality. And it's not something that if you don't believe in, it doesn't affect you. It's affecting you, and it always has, and it always will. And nobody's exempt, not even little children. It's just cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. It's just this law that we live within. And I call it the law of karma. And if you've followed me long enough, you've probably heard me say it, and I have other episodes where I talk about karma in great depth, but usually I'm a guest on someone else's podcast. So I've never actually talked about it on mine. But the universal law of karma. So when we talk about karma, we oftentimes think that this is our like myth. This is the myth, what we think karma is. We usually think karma is like this good deed or bad deed bank account. So if you're this good person, you get some type of, you do these good things, you take good action, you get this karma credit. And one day it's supposed to cash out and you're supposed to have that freedom, that love, that health, that happiness, that community that you always wanted because you were good after all, right? You eventually will get good things. That's a fallacy. That's wrong. That's not how it works. Karma, yes, is take an action, create a consequence. Take an action, create a consequence. And the intention behind your action will be reflected in the consequence. But here's the catch. Karma doesn't care what you do for other people. Shocking. It's this giant mirror that reflects the way you treat yourself back to you. So this is why sometimes we see those incredibly kind, selfless people, and you're like, these bad things always happen to them. Because that's how I witnessed it. It seems like the people that were the best, or, you know, they just suffered in silence, or they were donating all their time and money and love, it never worked out for them. Suddenly they're diagnosed with cancer. Suddenly, you know, they're scammed. Suddenly this. And you're like, what is happening? And I was also one of those people, but I I wasn't like these negative things didn't happen for me in that great of a scale, but I was literally a professional humanitarian. That's literally what I went to school to do. It's where you found me after school, in school. I volunteered throughout college, like, and I cared. I do care. I cared a lot. I always said things like, I feel like I was born into some level of privilege and I want to use it to help lift other people up. Well, the only thing that ever happened was I got pulled down. But I worked with tons of vulnerable people. I enjoyed the work, but my life was a mess. It was a disaster. I had no money. I was exhausted all the time. My relationships suffered. I feel like my friends used me at the time. I was living in this house of mirrors. Like I thought I was this good person. And in some ways, like good things would eventually happen to me, but it's like everything always got worse. And you can see this, like just even think about someone that you're like, that's the nicest person ever. Do they really have good luck? I doubt it. They might be able to smile through the bad stuff and make it seem less awful, but I'm sure they don't have good luck because it's not about what you do for other people. And it's not because other people don't matter, but it's because we're all exactly equal. And when we start to put other people ahead of us all the time, the law of karma, it's not this, doesn't have this ability to judge. It just action consequence. It's impartial. So it watches you donate your time to these other people, maybe donate your money, your life force. And it's saying, it watches you do that and it perceives that you say, this person is more worthy of my time. This person is more worthy of my money. And this person is more worthy of my life force, my purpose than I am. And the universe is just like this dumb genie. And it's like, yep, as you wish. And then we lose more time. We lose more money and we lose more of our life force. And it goes to other people because we set that pace. And if your cup is actually overflowing, like if you literally are bored, you have time, you want to do something kind with it, you are wealthy and your desires and dreams are met and you want to give back, or if your purpose is truly to lift other people, to attempt to lift the other people up. If you figure it out, let me know because it didn't work for me. Then it's in alignment. But when you're still struggling with energy, when you're still struggling with abundance, when you're still struggling with finagling your purpose or why you're here, to give it away to someone else is blasphemy. And it's not to kick other people when they're down. You're like, oh, I haven't figured my stuff out. Well, can't talk to you. It's not like that. It's just being really honest about what your capabilities are and where you're at and choosing to live in alignment with what really matters to you and being cautious or conscious that it's going to come back to you, but maybe not how you think. So when we operate let's use Miley as an example. From this subconscious space of this storyline that I just want people to love me, but probably inherently some fear that people don't because of what's traveling through her line, it's going to naturally stop us from taking the actions we need to take to create the karma that we want to reap, right? Because if karma is this mirror that reflects back to us the way that we treat ourselves, then when we treat ourselves well, when we remember that we matter, that we're worthy, that we can't fail, that we're supported, that our voice and our gifts are sacred, and that this journey is this very beautiful place, and that we're a part of the universe, inherently perfect. We start to treat ourselves as such. So we start to act and live in that space at the action level. Well, that's a way that we treat ourselves positive. So it's this positive energy that goes out into the universe, and it starts to send positivity back, which is abundance. And so this is abundance of health or happiness or time or community or freedom or rest or peace. And when we start to negate our value and our purpose and our sacredness, we get a big negativity sign from the universe because we're standing in that negative energy, and it sends lack to us. So the lack of health, the lack of happiness, the lack of time, friends, community, rest, peace, freedom, you name it. And we don't want to be in lack. I mean, I don't want to say everyone, but I just don't think there's anyone who wants to be there. And it's not our natural state. Our natural state is to be abundant. Our natural state is to remember our divinity and our sacredness and live in it. That's the point of life. And so when we have these negative imprints that say something otherwise, it naturally makes us more fearful or hold ourselves back. And we naturally end up in that state of lack, and we're not able to create those things that we're desiring to experience, which is the abundance of health, happiness, time, freedom, love, rest, you name it. So we want to rework the blocks that are essentially stopping us from moving forward, right? And what's important to note too is that when we think of karma as a mirror, it also suggests that our reality is a mirror of what's going on inside of us. So when we believe something to be true, the universe reflects it back to us as true. So you can spend your whole life waiting to find that feeling of lovability in somebody else, but it's never going to come. Your relationships are going to feel lackluster, but it's not necessarily the person that you're with. It's that story lives within you, and you can't receive the love because you don't believe you're worthy. So the universe is this giant mirror, and it's reflected in our bank accounts, our health, our love, our friends, our rest, our peace. And I mean, I've been working on this for 6 years, like personally. And although it's amazing. It's incredible how quickly things change when you let go of a belief. So things happen very quickly. And my life is like polar opposite of where I started, and it gets better every day. But I still work through those things on a regular basis. And every time I do, something new and amazing opens up for me. So even though my reality has come a really long way, it's still not perfect, but progress is the point. It's not perfection, right? So in a nutshell, it's really important also to know that you're meant to live a life that you enjoy. You are not, when you're experiencing negativity, it's not because you deserved it or you earned it, or this is like you reap what you sow, you should have been a better person. It's not like that. The point is to remember that you're meant to have a life you enjoy, that you're meant to grow, that you're meant to be prosperous, and act accordingly. It's like this fun game of memory, right? Our soul loves to grow and learn and explore. And what's one of the ultimate tests of our spiritual journey? It's to come to a place like Earth and forget everything that you are and hope that you along the path remember. Like, is that not the greatest test of it's a hard game? It's a hard game. If you're on Earth right now, you chose to do the expert level soul mission. But the point is to forget, come here not knowing, and see if you can remember what you're worthy of. Earth is like a school for soul development, and that's kind of the name of the game. And the other component of Earth School is that we come here to learn how to access our inner godliness, our inner divinity. So like if we talk about, God or spirit or the universe or creator, they're all creative energies. The ultimate magic of divinity is the ability to create, right? So we come here as these sort of little sparks of divinity, learning to see if we can also create. Can we create a home? Can we create children? Can we create a expansive life? Can we create a business? Can we create a legacy? Can we create love? Like, can we create these things? And the extra challenge of being on Earth is you create it in the physical realm. You know, we're not ghosts necessarily. We're here in the physical realm, physically building a home out of physical matter, physically birthing a child, physically creating a business. It's like this extra layer of challenge to build in these lower dimensions, which is the physical world. The three-dimensional world is very physical and dense. And so it's like extra challenging to create here. And it's like, I guess we're gluttons for punishment by coming here, but that's what we're doing. So, and again, I mean, I think anyone listening to this would probably be like, I'm here because I'm curious and I'm open, but it's a catch-22. What I'm about to say, you can argue with me on it, but just give me a second. So I'll explain. It doesn't actually matter what you believe or you don't believe. The fabric of reality is structured as such. You can either play the game consciously and embrace why you're here and embrace your journey and remember your magic and your power and get along with the program and move forward. But if you don't believe that to be true, it just like actually doesn't matter. It still affects you. It's a law. You can't just be like, I don't believe in that, so it won't affect me. It affects you every day. And I say that because I was, believe it or not, a skeptic. When I first started moving into this work, I was just like, okay, unfortunately, that makes perfect sense. When I was learning about karma, I was like, what? That makes logical sense to me. But I was like, it can't be true. And I actually started trying to disprove the law of karma by playing with it and taking different actions with different intentions and all these things. And it worked. Unfortunately, my hypothesis was that it was just woo-woo bullshit and I was going to disprove the theory. But as soon as I started it, my whole life started changing for the better. And it doesn't even make sense. Like, I don't even know where to start, but I really knew that I was being in a negative energy at my past job. Like, I just knew I wasn't valued. I knew that I was being walked on. I knew that it wasn't this place where I was like acting positively for my divinity. Like, I just knew that. So I started taking up more space at my job. And did I get in trouble with management? Yes. But did the progress I was actually looking for start to happen? Yes. Was it also a sign that I wasn't meant to be there? Yes. Did I leave and take a massive pay cut, but somehow have more money? Yes. Did some of the things I couldn't achieve by being in that place start to happen to me? Yes. So one of my biggest things was I always wanted to travel. Like travel, I want to travel, I want to see the world. I feel like when I'm seeing new things, I'm like that little kid who's like, a bug, the water. Like I just feel so excited. It's like the first time I'm witnessing these things and I feel very childlike and I love it. But did not have the financial means to do that. So then I leave my job. I stumble into $10,000 and instantly traveled. Like you can't make that shit up, right? It could have been a coincidence, but unfortunately I see it happen all the time and it just is how it works. But what I say is true. The only thing I would say is like if you want to argue about it and you're like, that's not true, it's like, well, sometimes our thoughts are so powerful that we can manifest. I don't know. It does actually, never mind. But it's just the way that the world works. And you can either get with the program or struggle trying to figure out what game you're even playing. And it just doesn't matter what you believe or don't believe. It's just how it works. But this is the thing I wanted to expand on where it's like truth is sometimes subjective. So it's not that that is untrue. So that's how the universe works, but you are able to explain it in different ways that would allow other beliefs to also be accurate, but just not if you're a good person and you slave away for everyone else, you'll get ahead because you probably won't. All right. So I did want to share some really cool examples of people I've worked with that have like these limiting blocks of the past and limiting beliefs and what happens when you break them and how it affected their life. So I just have a few like stories instead of just information. So I'll start with me because it was such a groundbreaking moment. So I was doing this work for myself, when I work in the Akashic records, there's sort of two paths. And I'm starting to realize that if you put the two paths together, that's where you get the most magic. But you can go and I can like, as like a conscious in a wake state, like go into the records and just ask a series of questions and you'll get your answer. So you'll know what your block is. And you can just get it in this waking state. But sometimes when you're a skeptic or you're logical like me, it's like sometimes you need to see what really happened. So then you can also like do a meditative journey and go watch the story play out in that sort of theta hypnosis state. So I do both and they both are incredibly magical. So in my work as well, there's two paths. You could let me go in and find out for you exactly what the issue is and how it's affecting you, and I'll tell it to you, or join a class, let's do some Akashic journeys, and we'll go and visibly find them ourselves with the visuals. And then I'm the, like instructor. I don't even know. I usually do my courses with the students. So if we do walk on the wild side or we do creatrix, I will do it with them. So I'll just peel back another layer for myself. And so I'm like a participant, but I'm also, I guess, the host. I don't know. So I will be able to help you interpret what you're seeing. Like, I don't know what it would be called, but I can just like sort of remote view, or I can sort of see it with you and I can help you fill in the blanks and of what's the themes of being that are being said. It's this weird magic gift that I didn't know I had, but it's really cool. So anyways, this particular time I was going into a meditation for myself and I wanted to know, I was just unblocking. I was doing like money, like abundance. It wasn't really, I guess, money. It was just abundance in general, which is like, again, more health, more happiness, more time, more love, and yeah, more money. So I went into this story, and sometimes for me, it is past life stuff, but this time it was actually childhood, and I don't typically go there. So it was really fascinating. So I all of a sudden appear in this memory, and I'm in a car seat, and I do remember this just as a conscious person. I have a really great memory, but I didn't remember like how childhood Kayla interpreted the story, but I remember the event. So I was in a car seat. I must have been like 2, possibly 3. And we were driving home from my grandparents' house, which was 5 hours away. And we'd done this drive probably many times. And I was in the car seat, but this time we were driving at night. It was very dark out, and I just like did not want to be in that vehicle. I remember telling myself in the memory, like, don't cry, don't get upset, like just struggle through it, like just suck it up. Like, you don't want to upset your parents. But because it was dark, I couldn't see. I felt like I'd been in that car forever. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I fought my urge to not cry, and I cried. I cried. I was upset. I was the feeling, I could feel it. So incredibly frustrated. So I start crying. And of course, my parents are like, damn it, And all of a sudden, they do to me what feels like a miracle. They put in one of my Sesame Street audio tapes into the car cassette thing, and my favorite music is playing in the car. And I was such a music lover, like still am, was then. I would listen to music before I went to bed. Like obviously it was like Sesame Street, Sharon Lois and Bram, and Fred Penner, like that kind of like childhood music. And I'd listen to it every night before it put me to sleep. And they could magically allow this blissful music to play in the car. I had no idea the car could do that. I didn't know that was a feature. I had no clue that this was possible. And I was like wide-eyed and like, it felt like a miracle. I was so pleased. What a beautiful gift. I immediately stopped crying and I was so happy. But even my childhood self was skeptical. This is the limiting belief that I brought up from this moment. I've thought, could the car always do this? I've been in this car a lot of times. I was upset long before this moment, and the car always could play my music, and they never told me about it. I was like mad that my parents didn't ever allow this to take place in previous experiences. And I made this limiting belief that I only get rewarded after I've went through a lot of suffering or discomfort. And that if I'm relaxed or at peace, my needs or desires go unnoticed. And even saying it to you right now, it just makes me want to like scream, because it's my entire life follows that exact storyline. And I mean everything. And it's just like, what were you doing 2-year-old Kayla? Like, I love you, but what was that? So when I got out of that meditation, I was filled with so much rage. Not at my parents, like they didn't even do anything. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't even mad at myself. I was just so mad because it's taken me, how old am I right now? 5. So it's taken me 32 years to unpack that. So I lived 32 years under that story, and it's okay. When you have that emotional reaction, it's a good thing, because you're letting it go out of your endocrine system, out of your emotional body, which is like, it's a good sign. So it's so angry. I remember like picking up this, like it was a foam thing, and I threw it at the wall, and it like didn't feel good enough. So I threw it again. And then like 5 minutes later I was crying, which is like good. You want to have that like release, but it just explained my whole existence. How did it mirror in my day-to-day life? Literally, it's everything. I mean everything, everything. But let's look at money, just because it's an obvious thing that you manifest. So my whole life, I could never, ever make any type of financial progress unless I had struggled through the work first. So, for example, I don't even know where to start. It was everywhere, but I always ended up having to have 2 jobs, because it was always that one job never felt like it could manifest me enough money. And as soon as I had 2 jobs and I wasn't sleeping, I was exhausted, I was depressed, I was like chaotic. Like I remember going to work one day as a server and I only had one shoe. It's my other shoe. Like just at that brink, all the time. And it's like when I was working that much, it's like I was making money, but like I obviously had no time to spend it. And as soon as I'd be like, oh, great, I can tone it down. Like being at peace was like never going to earn me money. I had to be in absolute chaos and distress. So I remember this one time as well. First of all, I was working two jobs. Like on paper, I was like making money, but I didn't have any of it. And I had finally, so especially with the rewards, okay, remembering that I put travel on a pedestal. That's my greatest reward right now. So of course, there was this event where I was taking this reward. So me and my friend from Alabama were going traveling, and we had scraped together enough money to book the flights. But the 6 week journey was coming up, and I didn't have a dime to my name. Like not a dime. I was working two jobs, I was saving, but it just wasn't there. Money, especially people, doesn't make any logical sense when you manifest. There's really not a lot of logic to money when it comes to manifesting. It doesn't make any sense. It just happens this way. But anyways, so, and especially because of this limiting belief, right? So I was working two jobs. Like literally I was working like, I think 8 a.m. and I would be getting off work at midnight. Like I was working 8 to 5, and then I would go to work at 5:30, and I would work the moonlight shift, and I'd be done at like midnight, sometimes later, and I'd do it all again. I was so tired. So had no money to my name. This is exactly the time period where I lost my shoe, showing up at work in pure chaos. And then guess how I ended up getting that money to travel? I totaled my car, and I got the payout just before I left. So, and me totaling my car was actually also a byproduct of how stressed I was. That was probably one of the most obvious things. But even in my business, because remember, I just processed this memory and reworked it like a couple months ago. So even in my Akasha Awakened experience, like I felt like I couldn't, especially when it came to travel. Whenever I manifest money in my business now, it's always been like I really had to push myself to like the brink, again, at my limit, peak frustration before I could manifest like bigger realms of income. And last summer, my sister and I went to BC, and we were going, I had kind of like, summer is a bit like slower. And so we were going like right after summer, and I launched a course. Okay, so, and we were going for like 10 days. We were going for a long time. We were driving. It was great. So we were spending a lot of time in Vancouver. And because again, travel is one of my peak rewards, I launched this course, and honestly, it was like the hardest, and it was probably one of the most magical courses I've done. It's like the second level of Learn the Records. It was so incredibly magical. It's some of the most profound information, but I wasn't expecting it to be as difficult to create as it was. It was like supposed to be 8 weeks. It turned into like 9, and it probably should be more. And it was like I wrote a book basically. Praise be to the person who helped me edit it, because I would have died without her. But it's a book, like it's over 200 pages long. And it was like I'd never been so stressed. And it was also like something that was so near and dear to my heart that it was just inherently really, really scary to teach, because it's so close to you, and you're like, yeah, it was the hardest thing I've done in a long time. And of course, it was happening right before I was going to travel. And I was probably as stressed and exhausted and at the brink as I'd been in a long time. And of course, you're going on that trip. And it's this brink of mine, this push to the limit before I get the reward. Like, I can't describe to you how big of a limit it is, because I don't know if this will make sense to anyone. It's just a reference point for people that are astrologers. So my big three is Capricorn, Virgo, and Aries. So extremely work oriented, a lot of gusto, can kind of persevere through anything. And honestly, so when you just think about those three energies, and even my experience, constantly having two jobs, like working 8 a.m. until midnight, doing it all over again, like I know how to work hard. I know how to show up. I know how to push through something. And that's not necessarily a positive thing. But for me to be at that kind of brink, it takes a long time. Like this is like heart palpitation, not sleeping. Like I wouldn't say panic attack, but I've had those, definitely had those before. And anyway, so it's not just like a cute, I had to work an extra 10 hours. It was like losing sleep. It's just really hard. So I'm so excited to see what happens when we release that storyline, because it is so, so profound to me. That was a big one. And in the smallest little minute moment, right? I also have, I'll share another one, and I'll do my best to share it because it's not super, yeah, it was really interesting. So in my recent go of Walk on the Wild Side, which we run every Pisces season, basically, because it's the dreamy end of an era before Aries comes and spring comes. So we do Walk on the Wild Side, and it's definitely like I love everything I create, but that one is just magic, which is saying a lot because everything I do is pretty pretty profound if you focus on it. So Walk on the Wild Side this year, one of the students had this memory come up, and the memory was from a different life. And it was kind of this like hard to relay experience, but I'll do my best. So she was in a different life, and she was the daughter to this really kind man. But the kind man, like her father was very old, and there was like someone who was kind of like her father's age who was like, I want to marry your daughter, I want to marry your daughter. But he was like a gross, evil, disgusting, not good man. And her father was, I think, always like, no, 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 you can't marry her. But then he, I think, dies, and no one's really there to protect her anymore. And she ends up marrying this abusive, old, awful, controlling man. They have two kids together. And there's this idea basically, so I want you to, it was like a literal thing. So they lived in like the lower area of like, let's say a tower. Let's just use a tower because it'll make the most sense. So she lived on like the bottom floor of this tower. It was like dark and limited, and I don't want to say it was dark, but it was like limited, and it was kind of like, there was only so many people down there. So there was nobody really there to rally for her. There was this association with like the higher levels in the tower that she lived in being like where there was light and more people and freedom and maybe even like higher levels of abundance and autonomy. And so she really wanted to like move to these upper tiers. Like she wanted to be like, hey, I want to move my life to these upper tiers. And in this story, essentially, she's finally decides she's going to leave this abusive husband. She packs up her daughters and they decide to kind of like run away in search of this like higher way of living, not the lower poverty, like kind of gross, abusive life. She wants to search. And it was literally symbolic. Like she was going up a mountain, and the height is important. She wanted to go up this mountain, and she packed her supplies, but basically like the trek or the journey to go to this higher state of living in the mountain where like the nicer people lived and like better opportunities, she died along the journey, and so did her daughters. And her limiting belief that came forward is like, don't reach for anything higher because you'll die and it won't work out and you'll lose everything that you loved. Goosebumps. And it was about, there was like, her block was kind of related to, kind of like, I have these dreams and these visions and I know I have these gifts, but like when I go to like put them forward, when I go to execute them, when I go to do them, there's this block. I just can't focus. She's like, I'm so productive. I can accomplish so many things, but when it comes to my dreams and the things I really desire, I just physically can't do it. It's just shut down. And that was the limiting belief, that she like went on this mountain journey to like go to find this new way of being or living that was like this higher, literally higher altitude, but also higher in the sense of like a better life, more freedom, more love, more respect. And so there's this imprint in her story that if you reach for something higher, you'll lose everything. So it's not worth it. Just settle for what you have, even if it's not exactly what your dreams of, because at least it's safe and you're alive. Shocking. This is what we unpack all the time. Like she's also one of my, so I remember it really well, but this is just what we unpack. Like I had another one, it was 2 years ago now, where the story was that she lived in a past life. She had been born to this very impoverished family. And her mother decided to sell her daughter to this like rich family, and she was going to be like kind of like a servant. Like you almost want to imagine like Cinderella. Like they were like, we'll buy your daughter actually, and she can be like our housekeeper, and we'll treat her really well, and it'll be really nice, and you'll have all this money. So the mom decides to sell the daughter, which was the client, the person in the group, and she went to this family, and this family wasn't nice, and they didn't treat her well. And then later in the story, the past life, she's walking down the street and she sees her mother, at like this kind of cafe, and she has like fancy clothes on and she was eating, and she's like, wow, you know, my mom wanted that bougie life more than she wanted me. And there's this limiting belief for this person that like, if like apparently like kind of like that, I'm not lovable. There's, more superficial things that people would desire than to desire me. And it just shows up in all these like interesting ways in her life with relationships, with showing people who she really is, like all sorts of things like that. So it's just there. And I mean, if you're someone who doesn't love the idea of past lives, again, go back to episode 17, your past lives. Sometimes these lifetimes that we're looking at are the lifetimes of our ancestors, and we're watching it through our experience because that story now lives in us. So it's something that can be processed through multiple different lenses, but it's still the same truth, right? Kind of what I was saying about karma. And of course, there's like general themes. I've started posting about them on my Instagram page, but it's like if you've even had a past life at war or as some type of warrior or defender, there's themes that are going to come forward in your storyline that it's just better. I have to protect something greater than myself, and my personal journey and story doesn't matter. Whenever I meet people who like died in war in a past lifetime, they oftentimes push the people that they love the most away from them because they kind of have this imprint, this memory that they're going to die, that they're the sacrificial lamb. So don't get too close to me because I will let you down and I will die and it's going to hurt both of us. If I just have nobody around me, it's so much easier to die for what I'm fighting for. And so they push intimate relationships away a lot and they don't let people in, and they're very like solo because they have this memory of dying and causing pain for both of them. The longing, the missing their wives when they have this other call or this other mission that they have to accomplish, or how much pain it caused their wives when they die. So they just don't engage. There's lots of interesting sort of bigger themes that play out in the collective. Okay, so what to do about it? What can you do about it even just right now today? So the simplest thing is assessing the areas in your life which you actively know you are treating yourself negatively and putting everyone else and their dog ahead of you. And begin to gently address those situations, even if it's just having a better boundary or being more honest with yourself about what you really can and can't do. Just calling a little bit of the very obvious areas what you know that you sabotage yourself. So, in the relationship, in your partnership where you don't speak up for what you really want, or you just kind of, those resentments that build up, or, where you let guilt, mom guilt overrule what you really want to do, like just areas where you're going to negate yourself in the name of another. Just actively, just gently addressing them. Sometimes it's just a conversation. It's just a boundary. It's just finally saying no. Or when your partner asks you where you want to go for supper, you actually tell them where you want to go instead of being, oh, it doesn't matter, and then not having as great of a time because you're at some, sports pub that you don't want to be at or whatever it is. It's just the tiniest little things. And just because it's taken lifetimes to create the negative belief, just like Miley said in her interview, I never felt stage fright again. It is that freaking fast when you actually get to the root. But when you start even just taking those little actions and setting better boundaries or speaking up for yourself or saying what you really want, even those tiny little things, major shifts. Just stick with them. Don't just do it once and expect a miracle. Like consistently hold that new boundary or speak up for yourself. Number 2 is if you want to do a little bit deeper level of self-work, assessing what you know are trauma points in your story. You could go as far back to ancestors, but probably you would be like, okay, when I was a child, we moved schools when I was in grade 3 and I never saw my best friends again. And you remember that being a really difficult time. Well, there's probably something there, right? So you can just reflect and do some journaling, be like, what kind of limiting beliefs did I come up with there? Was it that, you'll have to really concentrate and feel into yourself, but you'll say like, did I develop this limiting belief that what I want doesn't matter. I have to do what the authority figure says, like AKA my parents. And then you'll kind of say, well, do I do that now? Like, do I constantly override what I want and decide to do what society expects me to or my manager expects me to? Do I not, if other people aren't happy or getting what they want, then it's my fault. Like you'll kind of just ask yourself some things in this nature and kind of just look at those moments. And then if you're like, I want to get to the root of this, I want to figure this out, there's a lot of healing modalities that can help you with that. So obviously the Akashic records. So this is like this is the foundation of what I do. Like this is just everything. Especially the healing journeys, which are this, I'm changing everything at the end of August. So there'll actually only be one session offering that you can even get as a one-on-one with me. And that will be where the healing takes place. Sometimes we can just like check in, give messages, but I'm focusing on that one because I want to do this work with people. I want to do the deep stuff. I want to do the healing stuff. So do a soul return. Astrology can also give you some clues. Like, let's say I have some astrology sessions up for the rest of August too, but let's say you have a placement in your chart that says in a past life, you were in an abusive relationship and you had to just keep the peace and, kind of manipulate yourself and be like the happy person. It'll tell you right in those astrology sessions, like you're basically kind of a people pleaser now. So you have to stop. You have to let other people down and start pleasing yourself. It's going to be really hard and scary for you if you have that placement, but it's the remedy. Or there's hypnosis is huge for this stuff. Love hypnosis. I'm not a hypnotist, but I love hypnosis. A lot of my insights I've gained through that. Join one of my classes. do some of the work, especially I have one, Creatrix, that one's specifically about money, and it's a lot of data and knowledge, but it's also those Akashic journeys, guided meditations. Like sometimes you can even just like find ones on YouTube and it'll be like rework your subconscious beliefs. Like that's, you probably, I don't know of any, but just even if you're a good meditator, go in with that intention and see what comes up, you know? And it's just the path forward, especially when you feel stuck, when you feel like you just can't move into that greater level of peace, or you can't move into that next level of abundance or love or connection. Usually something like that is the culprit. So if you have any questions, my website and contact is in the link below. So reach out. I'd love to field any questions. But anyways, I'm cheering you on. I'm in your corner from afar, vastly desiring that you break out of whatever limits you have subconsciously and create the beautiful life that you came here to live.